started.
Alright, 6:01 is
6:01, okay. We're here for our budget review committee meeting, and Elaine Mosher-Campoli, I'm the chair. I am here. Councilmember Lepar-Shu is
Hello.
also present. Councilmember Carson is present, and Councilmember Forster Rothbart, as we understand, will not be with us tonight. Okay, so the acceptance of minutes. Did anybody have any comments or anything about the minutes that we got?
I did not.
Okay.
Yes, I did read these.
Yeah, I read them, and they were brief and to the point.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it had, I was able to go in and confirm the list that we came up with, so that was the most important thing. All right, so we've accepted the minutes. And we can move on to, and also just real quickly, attached to our agenda, we had this document that had come out from the Office of the State Comptroller
Yep.
about federal relief aid and local government finances. So I think this is something that we can maybe, look over and review in the future. But I found that and sent that along because I thought that might be helpful in our conversations. So, but I know that it just went out today, so I don't expect that everybody's had a chance to read it. All right, but I think we can get started with our Human Resources Department first, if you are ready to go.
I am.
All right, thanks.
Carrie's getting the screens up and running.
All right,
Oh.
Nancy.
All right, so the way I wanted to approach this, with all the questions you folks were asking, I kind of wanted to go through our services and kind of just give a highlight on each of the services that we're doing, or a portion of them, the changes that have been made in the last 7 months, and where we're looking for efficiencies, where I see some cost savings and stuff like that, rather than, so kind of looking at each question per category rather
Yeah.
than just answering them all, so.
And that's fine. If
Okay.
it wasn't clear, we weren't expecting like line by line go through all the questions.
Okay.
Just that was, to give some guidance on what we were looking for.
So.
Thank you.
After each one, if you folks have questions you want to throw in about a specific category, please feel free. But Carrie, if we go to the first one. So the first one, I just did them alphabetically, benefit administration. So one of the big issues that we were having were response times. When our employees or retirees were having problems, and we were making very good progress in that. Michelle Howard, who was one of the HR specialists that we hired, she got hired in late September last year, is really embracing that and done a really good job of handling those complaints and not complaints, issues that our employees are having in a much more expeditious manner than we were able to when it was just me handling that. One of the things that's going to really, really help us moving forward is that if we are to implement Tyler technology, it does come with EEI communications, which is an automatic line to our insurance providers, so that instead of this being a multi-step process where somebody comes in, they fill out a piece of paper, we type it into our payroll system, then we're handing it off to our brokers, and it's just very inefficient the way it's going right now. The EEI system allows us to go ahead, and once we get a employee change or a new employee insurance change, insurance enrollment into the system, it just automatically goes to Excelis and the processing starts. So it's going to make it easier on us. It's going to make things more efficient on our brokers, so hopefully they can be more receptive to more the customer service types of things that we need to do with them. So one of the programs I have noticed has been underutilized, especially in the last 2 years since we came up with the new insurance program, got rid of the co-pays, is our flex spending program. So for flex spending account is when people can put money aside away for a year, and that's done on a tax-free basis, and then they can go out and they can pay for whatever, and it's saving them money because they're paying for medical services or dependent care services on a tax-free basis. So it's reducing their taxable income. There's just not as much need for that anymore. insurance, I think for a family plan, we're looking at almost $3,000 a month at this point.
It's about 30,000 a year for a family.
Okay.
Yeah, you know,
And
so,
individual?
About 11.
Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, the FSA is a very low-cost program, but it is something that takes a lot of administrative time out of Ginny's office
Yeah.
and my office. So it's just something to look at. And then one other thing that we had been looking at last year are wellness initiatives and better education when it comes to telemedicine and mail order prescriptions. These are the types of things that can help lower our experience rating by making the costs for our health insurance, you know, folks lower, which could then lower our premiums eventually. And again, you know, as far as the wellness initiatives, I think that's very up in the air whether those would work, but if we can get people using telemedicine and mail order prescriptions, there's a direct benefit to that.
Okay.
That's just an education thing. Civil Service Administration is next. The Civil Service Administration, the first thing to become more efficient is it's gotta be just more than just me that's doing it. So we do have 2 staff members that will be taking part in the New York State Civil Service Institute, which actually starts on Monday. Luckily, they are doing it remotely this year, so there's very little cost to us, except for just prioritizing our work time.
And can I ask what the cost is?
Sure. It's free.
Oh.
So it's only costing what we could be doing if we weren't
Oh, the
attending these
actual
Zoom classes.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I mean, when it was in person, when I did it, if we have an opportunity to send somebody in person, I would absolutely love to do that. We anticipated it would be in person this year. I had it in the budget for it to be one person going in person, but the state decided to do a hybrid, so we're gonna have 2 people go through the classes. And that's greatly gonna improve the efficiency in our office. We have
Yeah.
more than just me capable of doing a lot of the civil service stuff. And then planning for civil service is really difficult right now because we don't know what civil service is gonna look like in a couple of years. You know, they are going through such massive reform at the state level, that the job of administering civil service might be drastically different in 2 years than it is right now.
What's an example, Dave?
So the big thing is testing administration. So, I mean, like, when at last year's civil service conference, you know, the way the commissioner presented it to the 95 agencies that were represented there was, we need to look at civil service just as the 50-some words that are in the Constitution. Because that's the only thing about civil service we can't change. And everything else we want to look at objectively and decide what we want to do about it. So the biggest thing is test administration and how we're going to handle test administration going forward, meaning the entire appointment process of how we recruit, how we bring in new talent, how we assess them in the merit system is going to change. Things like position classification, you know, a lot of the other stuff that we do, you know, the legal side of the things, you know, Section 75, which is, you know, dealing with the legal terminations of tenured employees and things like that. That stuff's not likely going to change, but the selection process, test administration, how we actually bring people aboard is going to change dramatically in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And then in the meantime, what I want is, while we have this period, is just to make sure that we have our house in order. So the best we can do to make sure that we have all of our records up to date, everything like that, and fix those types of things in-house so that once we do know the direction civil service is going, we're ready to go and move forward in whatever direction that is. So, we did address fees last year. We did up fees for the outside agencies as part of the budget process last year, and that'll continue to be examined moving forward.
That was just like a one-shot change, right? Or did you step it?
That was a drastic, that was a step thing, yeah, so this was meant to be a first step.
Okay, so that wasn't because I remember you were talking about potentially like phasing it, or
Yes.
did you just initially say like you have 175 employees, this is the cost
Um,
per employee?
So that, we did move right to that model, but not necessarily at the rate that we looked at as the final rate.
I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Another change we did is we did eliminate the fees for test takers in an attempt to attract more people to take tests with us. We've only had 1 test this year. We're not gonna have a lot of tests this year because of the health program. So far, the big impact we've seen is more no-shows. So if that is going to be the case, and we're going to lose buy-in from candidates, and we're processing a bunch of candidates that aren't gonna show up for our tests, my recommendation would be to reinstate fees in 2026.
Yeah.
But it's very early, and we'll see.
Well, and does that have to be a 2026 thing, or is that something that we could do
We can
from
look at
time
it over
to
the course,
time?
yeah,
Okay.
we can look at it over the course of a 2-3 year period, I know.
Well, no, I mean, if by June, the percentage of no-shows
Mhm.
has, doubled or
Yeah.
something, then is that something that can be addressed mid-year?
I will have only had one more open competitive test
Okay, gotcha.
between now and June, so I do think
So
we should.
probably is realistic to go the full year.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Just because
Yeah.
there's so few tests to compare
Right.
right now. Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
it's
probably-
just hard.
At this time last year, we probably had 15 tests, and
Oh,
we've
wow.
done one so far this year.
Whoa.
That's a huge,
That's a massive.
that is,
And
you're
is
right,
that-
massive.
Oh, it's because of the health programs.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
So, and then what's gonna be a big challenge for next year is we're gonna have 2 new appointing authorities. We have the retirement of Library Director, Tina Winstead, and the retirement of Executive Director of the Housing Authority, Kurt Schulte. Yeah, both happening in midsummer, and, their successors are gonna need a little more handholding from our office moving forward for the next, until they get trained up,
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Drug and alcohol management program, so the drug and alcohol management program, I am now fully trained up on managing a drug and alcohol program. We did have a drug and alcohol program manager appointed to our office. That position just recently became vacant, so we'll be looking for somebody else to delegate those duties to. So the drug and alcohol program manager is the person that does the day-to-day, like, okay, we need to do a test today, let's go ahead and go through the process of going through the website, going in and getting the test ordered, and contacting the department head and saying, okay, you're taking this person over to go do their test today, and then my role as the designated employer representative, I'm the one that deals when those tests don't go well, when something goes wrong, overseeing the drug and alcohol program manager, and from that DER, I have the responsibility for both the OPT and the DPW side of the house. But for the program manager, we have Kelly Senhouse, that's the program manager for the folks that fall under FTA. And we had one of the HR folks that was doing program manager for the folks that fall under FEMSHA, which is our, basically our DPAW folks. So right now, I'm doing both, which is not necessarily ideal because there's certain checks and balances where you don't want those 2 duties to overlap, so.
Refresh my memory, what's FTR?
I'm sorry?
FTR? You just gave that acronym, what
Oh,
was it?
FTA, sorry.
FDA?
FTA,
Oh,
yeah, Federal Transportation, so that's the
FTA.
section of law that all of our bus drivers operate their licenses under, and then FEMSHA is the one that all of our snowplow drivers operate their license under.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that.
Yep. And then the other big project that I really wanna look at this year is that our drug and alcohol policy as it pertains to our non-DOT employees is in very much need of an update, so that's something that I've begun research. Okay. Employee relations, employee relations touches everything, and we're moving in the right direction. The fact that I have employees walking in the door and waving as they walk past my office to head right to Michelle's office is a good sign that they're starting, that she's starting to build trust with the employees. Nancy's taken a more active role too in that respect, and is today was able to help me with a very difficult situation while I was, working on payroll and civil service, tomorrow night. So that's moving along very well, and again, it's about that efficiency of making sure that we have everybody in the office can handle what's walking in the door, and we're moving in that direction. So again, the responsiveness to employees and retirees has been improved with more people able to answer those emails and answer that phone. Employees are starting to see that there is a difference in the fact that we're more responsive, they're coming to us more too, and sharing issues that we can really help with, and that's really important for all of our employees to have that outlet to say, listen, I have this problem going on, can you help me with it? And we can get them the resources they need. And like I said, that just comes with the trust that we're building in that building, so. Yep. Payroll and timekeeping, so payroll and timekeeping, again, Michelle is learning that at a much quicker rate than anticipated. running with it, wonderfully. I'm feeling like I'm going back in time a little bit this week, running payroll this week. It's the first time I've had to do it and help with it in probably 6 months. So it's neat to see some of the changes that they've made and some of the differences in the way they're handling things from what they did 6 months ago. But payroll and timekeeping isn't just an HR finance thing. It's something that everybody in the city takes part in, whether it's the employees properly filling out their timesheets, whether it's the timekeepers within each department, the department heads that are approving that time. So it very much is a collaborative effort, and I appreciate the assistance I get from all over the city. And Tyler Technology, if we do get that, is going to help. To what extent, we don't know yet. But the big thing coming forward is if we are entering into some sort of a transition this year, that is going to be a burden on particularly all the departments in the city, but very much Ginny and Ginny's department, my department. But we have eyes wide open this time after the UKG experience, and we're already making plans should that eventuality come to fruition. So.
Can I ask, what are
Sure.
what are some of the things that you will do differently this time? Because I know there was a lot of hope placed in the UKG system, and then that didn't really pan out. So when you say you have eyes wide open, what does that mean?
So, like, we have a really good understanding, I think, because of the experience last time on the scope of what has to be done. And the understanding that getting the information from one system into another is a tremendous, tremendous amount of work. And really, although we had a lot of people helping with that last time, it was falling, a lot of that, like, the little bit of work, we didn't make plans ahead of time to clear somebody's calendar for that, and that's where we're going this time.
Yep.
Is making sure that we're making plans, like the eventuality to have more help in the clerk's office so that Carrie can take the leadership role in the project.
Right.
Making sure that when I have an employee coming in on Monday, they're getting cross-trained on the stuff that Michelle's already learning, so she can use that, what she's already learned, and she's using UKG at a higher level than I am at this point to get the information out of that system into the new system. So
Okay.
making sure that we have holes in our workforce to allow for that.
Yeah.
Me not transitioning as much civil service stuff to her in anticipation of that happening yet, because we don't want it to go backwards. So that's what I'm talking about.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really
Yeah.
understanding the scope of what this project is going to entail is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Yeah.
sounds like you thought that it could just kind of be folded into other
Yeah, we
duties
thought they were
before,
gonna be
but
doing
now
all the
you're
work and everything,
realizing
yeah.
that it's just really, okay.
So when I was doing the UKG changeover, I was pretty much only doing that in payroll for about 6 months, and everything else fell off. And we don't want
Right.
that to happen
Okay.
again, because we cut a huge hole with that,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Yeah. Record keeping, we have a backlog of boxes in the basement that is a massive liability for the city. We don't know what's in them. There are hundreds of them. It's something that Carrie and I have talked about for years on how to take care of. We had put stuff in the budget to address it in the past, but then didn't have the manpower to carry out, what we had planned. So hopefully, again, with Tyler and that taking over from Laserfiche, we'll all have access to that without having to add another license like we were going to have to for Laserfiche, which if we had gone through with that, would have costed the city an extra $5,000 to add a license just for us. So between having the tools we need and having the staff, maybe come 2026, we can finally take care of that liability and get rid of all that paper that's down there.
So, the grant for code enforcement to digitize their records, is that something that could be utilized for this process?
So it's an annual award. The digitization portion was intended to be phase 2 of the project, which has not been happening. And
Oh,
that is
no.
partially because the plan was hopefully that the clerk's office was going to secure the grant for this year. And we unfortunately don't have the capability to do that. This
Okay.
year's staff has. So it's through no fault of their own.
Okay.
But that would be definitely something that we would be able to utilize.
Okay, cool.
Sound great? And these are alphabetical, so we're getting towards the end, really.
Okay.
Oh, that's good to know,
Yes,
thank you.
recruitment and retention, the staff member that left city service last week had really done a wonderful job with recruitment and retention. I was very happy with the work that was done there, and I really don't want to take a step back with that. next big advancement we need to make is online applications. It's something that most other agencies are doing at this point. We haven't gotten there yet. There was a solution tied into UKG with that. We decided not to roll it out because UKG was going so badly. If like we just all of a sudden dropped it, I didn't want to have it out there and have to go backwards. But with the application stuff that is in Tyler, that should help us. If that doesn't come to fruition, we need to move forward with doing some sort of a website enhancement
Okay.
for people to just be able to apply online.
Yeah, I agree. That seems like that's the way to do applications now. So I totally support, moving forward with that too. Great.
So,
And there are
Um,
third parties, that you can,
Right.
that you can do that through, so.
absolutely, yeah. And, the fact that we have to look at civil service and government work as a brand, and that the advantages that come with that, and that's where I really wanna focus when we're going out to job fairs, when we're going on that. It's not just about talking about the vacancies we have now, but the services that we provide. Because I know when I was doing a lot of job fairs, I had a lot of interested taxpayers coming over to ask about our staff and what they do. And having the right person up front that's answering those questions makes the whole city look good. When they say, can you tell me a little bit about the police hiring process, and tell me, because they're interested because of, it's a political topic about how we hire police officers and things like that. So I'm excited about the person that we have starting on Monday, that they're gonna be a really good face to answer those questions for us, so. So on the retention side, the city's commitment to addressing salaries has been a major factor in retaining employees over the last couple of years. We have seen them, I don't have numbers, but we are not facing the vacancies in most departments that we were, especially the CSEA units. And we need to then build upon that as HR, because we can't keep doing that. It's not all about the salaries. How do we keep people here? We keep people here by making this a good place to work. And we do that by really addressing quality of life. When we talk about changing people's schedules, we need to really have good conversations with the supervisors saying, okay, what's the real effect on that person's life? It might sound great to change this person's schedule to plus 3 a.m. start time, but what's the real effect on that, beyond how it helps the city? And little things like that, where we have to try to put a employee focus on the decisions we're making and what that impact is on our employee's life, I think is really important. And I think I'm starting to see that input kind of come through in the conversations that I've been having with our supervisors in the last 6 months. So I'm happy with that progress. Regulatory compliance. I think one of the big areas, one of the big accomplishments that we had this year was entering into the memorandum of agreement with the CSEA for shared responsibility for training and keeping up on our OSHA required and PESH required trainings among our DPW and workers in those types of fields. So we had a member of DPW and a member of HR that were they took train the trainer classes. The city's portion of that was to pay those people's salaries while they were taking those classes. And then the CSEA are the ones that they actually paid all the traveling costs. They put them up in the hotels for the weeks that they were at the trainings and all that. And it's starting to pay off. Those trainings started this week. Rob Stevens is the CSEA trainer that we have. He's one of our members of our water and sewer crew. And the feedback I'm getting from the staff is that they're very effective trainings. It's very good, well-presented materials. They're helpful trainings. We've started with things like confined spaces. I think that one's either completed or that one's coming up next week. Active intruder, traffic work safety zones, setting them up properly, making sure that you have giving proper right of way, and things like that. And it's all stuff that our folks have had in the past. A lot of our folks are OSHA 10 certified, but those are the types of trainings that we need to be doing every year to make sure that those skills are fresh and that they don't go stale. I'm really happy with the way this is going. It's just working together with the unions. Not only does it save money for us, but it's also building that trust between the unions too. So, OPT and HR jointly administering our drug and alcohol program. I've already talked about that a little bit. And then, what's different about us is that for civil service, we're not only making sure that we're compliant with regulatory agencies, we we are a regulatory agency. That's the job of civil service, is to regulate the fact that the 4 agencies under our jurisdiction are making legal hires, they're making legal decisions, we're certifying their payrolls and all that stuff. And those are all things where, like, we keep falling into these traps where we fall behind, and that's what we fall behind on, and then we're all of a sudden putting resources into catching up, and that's all we're doing for a couple of weeks, let's catch up on this. And then we fall behind again, and we need to break that cycle, and we need to improve the procedures that we have, especially when it comes with the communications we have with the school district, and not so much with the library. Library, we kind of cheat because we do the pay. So it's a lot easier for me to keep an eye on the library, because we're actually issuing paychecks than the other 2 agencies. So that's a big focus for me too. It's just, and I'm very fortunate to have an awesome relationship with Reggie Ranieri McGinnis at the school district, and she's understands that it's going to benefit both sides to build these procedures for the school district and make sure that everybody's compliant. So, and then last is retirement. This is one that, like, we've really struggled with. We have a backlog of folks that need service certifications. Ginny helped me. Ginny's up here. You know, Katie was still our security administrator. It never got changed.
Becker, not kidding me.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was
No,
wondering.
not you, Katie Becker. You know, and like I had been trying since October, finally Ginny intervened, we got together with the retirement system last month. We got me properly appointed as the security administrator, which means we now get these new people trained, on how to administer the retirement system. So again, it's just not falling all on me. There's 3 or 4 of us that can do it. Right now, I'm the only person that can register new employees for the retirement system right now. I'm the only one that can upload forms to the retirement system. You know, Jenny's the only one that can do the reports, so, yes.
Can I ask a really niche question?
Yeah.
Enhanced reporting, what is the timeline for that?
Tyler.
UKG is not enhanced,
So they told us they were, they told us they could.
compatible?
What we learned once we got in there is that there were specific statistics that they were having trouble providing. The most significant one was the service time statistic.
Oh,
And having a payroll system that has trouble calculating service time is like trying to sell a statistic, you know, program to MLB and then finding out that it can't calculate batting average.
right.
So that's why Ginny's been having to do all the reporting stuff by hand.
That's
and-
insane
and-
to think about.
Yeah.
That's so much work.
And it's just really her.
So I mean, genuinely, like, we cannot stay with UKG. So even if Tyler were not implemented due to what I would imagine the only reason would be the great expense, we would need to find another payroll solution
Yes.
because it's not
Worst case
compatible
scenario is
with the
going back to
retirement
roll
system.
one, but it needs to be done.
Okay, and we're confident that Tyler, because I know we put a lot of faith in UKG during that transition, that Tyler's program is compatible with enhanced reporting.
You know,
They are both certified.
Okay.
and Ginny has gotten recommendations directly from the comptroller's office that other department, you know, other municipalities using the same software have successfully moved to gold and that it's going well.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I just want to be sure. Okay. And it's good to know about UKG that it's just like not a viable option anymore.
Not unless we want Ginny to keep doing the
It doesn't
reports
sound
on the
like it.
weekends, which I don't think any of us want to see.
No, can I be honest? NYSER's reporting is cumbersome enough with like software that does because they're so particular about the way in which it's reported that like I can't imagine doing it by hand. I actually think about that sometimes, and now I know that you're doing it. Oh no.
All right, I just wanna do, you said this is the last one, right?
Yes, that's
Is
it.
that, okay.
Okay.
And I just wanna check in on time to make sure that we have time to go through everything, cause, what I was thinking is, you know, we go through this presentation, we can spend like a half hour on the finance department presentation
Sure.
then, and then we'll have time for follow-up, you know, to develop our follow-up questions if we have ones that we wanna submit to these folks. But before we move on, are there any other quick questions for?
Well, I just loved the idea, and this is, I didn't have a lot of time, I'm hoping to have more time next time to get into that document, but I think that a lot of the questions that were put in there were broad and helpful, right? Which is like, what opportunities for efficiencies? I know you have recently come to us with a plan, strategy for maximizing efficiency in your department. And also like, what barriers or opportunities to that? So when I'm, I think that the Tyler implementation, if that goes forward, is both a barrier and an opportunity. And-
Short-term barrier, long-term.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I can't think of anything else. Oh, and potentially not administering the FSA, right? Could be, and they are very cumbersome to administer. Are there any other things when you're thinking about barriers or opportunities within your department that haven't been presented previously in terms of efficiency or, operational excellence?
So I think the experiment is moving forward well in the fact that we're starting to see some of the advantages of having people dedicated to specifically to the care of our employees and things
Yeah.
like that. I think that's been beneficial, and also you can see some of the higher level stuff moving more quickly as well as I'm getting freed up. Things like I had a desk audit that had been sitting on my desk for a year that I was finally able to complete last month.
Nice.
That led to the appointment of Maureen Seymour to the senior engineering position,
Oh,
which you guys
cool.
approved that.
Great.
Well, Greg moved it forward, but it was part of the budget. Things like that takes a higher level of expertise.
Right.
The school district has some stuff going on, that are high level that they need help with, and I'm looking forward to kind of digging into those with Reggie, including a couple of desk audits. And, them all of a sudden needing an entire department to be developed for them in about a week was a challenge for us.
Transportation?
The transportation department. We got that.
For us too.
Up and running in 1 week's
That's
time.
wow.
Our transportation department?
No.
The school's transportation department, because they let go of their, they.
A contractor.
Their own.
Oh, in-house.
Decided they were going to do it all in-house, they didn't have any job specs, they didn't have any of that type of stuff, and we came into them like, just drop everything, and, those are the types of things that I can do when something emergent like that comes up, because the ball keeps rolling up with the other staff members that are there. The fact that we dealt with today, Nancy dealing with it, very fortunate that I had to have somebody as capable as she is to deal with in the sense that I know she
regards to public relations. I've heard you mention it a couple of times. Have you talked to those multiple organizations about interns for public relations?
Yep. So, the HR specialist that just left, Sam, she's been attending the industry days to recruit interns. So that's where we actually found our current intern, Amy. Was at an industry day event at Hardwick. And then me personally, I haven't had it this year, but last year I was doing presentations with the state on the whole concept of brand personal service. So we would go out and we were hosting events where we talk about the process and how customer service Stacy from the Department of Labor would help go through the process for the state, go through the process for the city. So we've been doing things like that.
Are you bringing on an intern for PR?
I not specifically for PR, I haven't talked about that. That's certainly something I would absolutely. I mean, for us, PR is recruitment. From an HR standpoint, you know, I mean, if there's other things that people would like us to publicize for the city, that's certainly.
You had mentioned earlier that you're looking for some leads so that you have an opportunity to do more and more relations. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, you know, things like, last time I attended, I was invited to attend an HR, class at Hardwick, go out there and talk to our students, just present to them, what civil service is, you know, and something that was for, Commissioner Dunn, what's going to be that. But I'm so open to any other ideas, you know, I've been attending the community baseball board, that's one thing, if there's anything I can do, can come talk to, groups of people who like to come talk to about becoming police officers or things like that. So I have made myself out there. If you guys give us contacts, I'd like to reach out to them. Just excited to support those options.
How many staff do you have in 2025?
So we are budgeted for full-time and part-time, plus myself, so 3 full-time and 1 part-time. One vacancy right now, which we can fill up on Monday.
So 3 full-time, 1 part-time.
Yep.
And how many did you have in 2023?
2023, we had the director, myself,
So 4 full-time.
no. Two.
Yeah, no, it's three. And it sounds like you're able to kind of bucket work, so like, you know, the payroll person, I forget what it was, but like that. Yeah, that there's sort of like work that has been assigned, which is helpful. You know, I'm in my experience, to just be able to specialize like this, and then you have sort of higher level knowledge. I think the transition away, just in my application, from having a director to principal HR specialist has been a very good one. In terms of, it was just 100% like outside perspective, I got to the nitty-gritty day-to-day. But it seems like because of your specialized knowledge, you're able to support your employees more, or your peers, or coworkers, or colleagues. Yeah, but then also be able to develop them in a way that allows them to do some of the higher level things, which is cool.
Right, and so David, I think you said you're in a 5-year term? Right, I think you told us you're going to retire in 5 years. So what is the succession with having such a small department?
So, I have had part-time heads and other support folks like Dawn, who's our church broker, come to me with heaping praise on how well Michelle is doing in her first 6 months. And I have, if that's
She
what
has your
she
qualifications.
would like to do, I'm gonna have to build it.
Okay.
You know, so she qualified for the
6
human
months.
resources specialist position.
It's hard for me to say.
And this is her basically second job. Her first career, she had 10 years in the post office, and now, you know, in her early 30s has come to this as her second career, and she seems to be really blossoming in it. So that is part of, so now that I have the vacancy and I have the opportunity, I want to shift more civil service work to her, because the ladder to the next level position, senior HR specialist, is not payroll. That ladder is civil service. That's where you learn to get to that next step.
So is 5 years enough?
So, yes, so 2-year succession plan, so 2 years as HR specialist, 2 years as senior. She would then at that point be able to qualify for my job.
Thank you.
And so if you begin to, get her on that track with the civil service knowledge, she moves away from payroll, who picks that up?
So my plan, with Linda coming in, who's my new hire starting on Monday, is to start cross-training her on payroll immediately for 2 reasons. One, to start shifting some civil service work to Michelle, but also, again, to prepare for Tyler.
Right.
So that way we have 2 people that are capable of doing that payroll, so that when we do start putting heavy assignments that come from the Tyler, plan, that the payroll balls keeps moving with somebody else.
Yeah.
It also, I went 15 years of my career where I basically blocked out 26 weeks on the calendar and said, I'm not taking vacations these weeks because it's a payroll week. I don't ever want any of my staff to feel
Right.
like they need to do that.
Mhm.
So I want everybody to be able to do payroll. I'm a backup, Ginny's a backup, Ginny's successor will be a backup. So I want 5 or 6 people that know how to do payroll, and it's not just 1 or 2 people. It was at one point where Ginny and I were the only 2
Right.
that could do payroll in the system. So those are the types of things I have in mind when developing the staff.
We should probably move along now, so we have
Okay.
enough time. No, thank you very much, I really appreciate it. The PowerPoint was helpful too, and we'll, if we have further questions, we will follow up.
I do
know.
have a further question, and I can't think of what it is right now, but I'm
We'll
just
have to
putting it
try to
out into
figure
the
it out.
ether. And
Yeah.
it's for like a further
Yeah.
discussion, so.
All right, so thank you very much, Dave.
Yeah.
Ready? Yeah, thanks, Judy.
Would you begin this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, I did my presentation a little bit differently. I actually took the questions that the committee issued
Awesome.
and just tried to answer them.
Thank you.
And so I'll take you through it. I won't read every word that's on here, but as far as services, first question, what's the services of the highest demand? And my very first response, depends on the receiver. So whoever we have in front of us is who the highest demand is at that moment. So then what I did is, I gave you categories of what the finance department does. And I gave you subcategories under those topics, just for you to get a little bit of an idea of the workload and different goals that we have to reach in the finance department. So obviously, there's the payroll and all of the aspects that relate to the payroll process itself, going right from the time entry, producing the paychecks, to filing the W-2 forms and all the quarterly reports for all the different agencies. Health, dental, and vision insurance, again, I gave you all the subcategories on eligibility, employee deductions, retiree billings, monthly processing of the insurance bills, consortium meetings, and things like that. New York State retirement reporting, which David touched on a little bit. Those reports comprise of monthly reports on pensionable wages, contributions, arrears, loans, days worked, so on. We have to keep track of, the contributions for both the employer and the employee. We have, union contract negotiations. For vendors, we have to follow all of the procurement procedures and doing our bids, our RFQs, our contracts, our retainages, our insurance requirements, our quotes, creating and maintaining vendor files, processing requisitions and purchase orders, and just, I don't want to read all of these out loud to you, but I'm just giving you the idea
lot of
of all of the
Yeah.
details that go into the actual processing. Our tech, this,
Can I just ask, similar to what I was talking about with David, like, how do you bucket this work?
we have different employees that do different assignments.
Uh-huh.
And we try to cross-train in certain situations, but we've got limited staff, so there's limited cross-training for certain sections.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I should know this off the top of my head, but could you tell us how many people work in the finance department right now?
So myself, and as you know, the account is a vacancy.
Yep.
We have Stephanie Decker, who is our finance coordinator. She does a lot of the payroll, the health insurance claims, things like that. John Janis is the purchasing agent. He does all the procurement regulations. Lisa Lawrenson is the administrative specialist. She handles basically all of the vendor processing and vouchers and invoices, and she does surplus. And then we have our new the
didn't
date,
count.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so I lost count. Was that 6 or 7 full-time?
1, 2, 4 right now, and 5 with I have 4 staff members, 5 with my vacancy, and then myself is 6. Then we have our tax collection process, which includes, in-person, online, phone, mail payments, escrow information, reminder notices, reconciliation with the county for tax collection. We have prorated taxes for loss of exemptions, water sewer billing collections. This is the creation of the billings. I coordinated that with Mary Ann. We work very well together. My goal is to train Stephanie to take that over once we're able to get some of the manual systems out of UKG. And we do monthly, quarterly, and annual billings. We have payment processing in person, online, mail, and phone, reminder notices, payment plans, providing the town with the usages for the town accounts so they can do their sewer billings, the re-levy process for unpaid billings. We have tax searches. We have customer greeting and assistance at the window, in person, and on the phone. We do miscellaneous billings on a monthly basis or annual basis, depending on the contract for OPT bus services, airport handling, septic services, rental, and you see the whole list there of all the different billing systems that we have to do. We have parking ticket collection. We have receipt processing for all types of revenue sources that come in for every department, every source. We do an average of 15 to 20,000 receipts a year. If we go to quarterly billings, that will increase processing another 12,000 receipts per year. Surplus, this is when we surplus different equipment and materials and supplies, and I kind of gave you the different aspects of handling all of the surplus. Bankruptcy plans, all of our liability insurance policies. Greg and I work on that together with our insurance agents. Fixed assets, we have to keep track of all of our buildings, land, equipment improvements, machinery, equipment, infrastructure, depreciation. Community development loans, we have loans, we have payment collections, we have to issue 1098 forms for it. We have to file mortgage and notes with the county, grants and all the related payments. Whenever we have grant activity, my office has to coordinate to make sure that all grant criteria is met and all of the cash flow and things like that are met according to whatever contract. Cash management, we have our daily cash deposits, cash flow to all the bank accounts, interest earnings on all the eligible accounts, our collateral, we have secure check positive pay for fraud protection. Airport, I have to file all the quarterly sales tax returns and all the jet fuel inventory returns, which is on a monthly and quarterly basis. We have ambulance billings. We have financial reporting, and I just highlighted some of the major financial reportings we have to do. The annual financial report with the state controller's office, the audited financial statements. 2 sections of it is in the fund financials, and then again in the government-wide financials. Reconciling all the accounts, verifying and balancing all the journal entries and the transactions to make sure that they meet all the financial criteria. GASB regulations, OPEB, which requires a lot of work to come up with our OPEB liability for our retiree health insurance. Budgeting, you're all very familiar with the budgeting process. I just highlighted a couple of the aspects for our cap funding, our tax limit, our annual budget creation, our constant monitoring of the budget and budget adjustments, and 5-year capital plan. All the state and federal agency reportings on all items, the payroll items, grants, ARPA bonds, depending on whatever the situation is. Bond council reporting, we have to update our bond council ratings every year. We have to make sure that we're compliant with all of the regulations. Issuing of debt, filing of the debt limit, debt service payments. We also take care of all of the library financial reporting. We also have to make sure all of our electric and national gas contracts are up to date, and we try to get long-term to secure in 3-year prices. Our office also handles all the claims against the city. That's another project that Stephanie handles for us. We have to coordinate all the information between all of the parties, the police department, the insurance agents, handling all the insurance recoveries.
Of these 32 enormous tasks, what do you own? What is your, what do you own? What is
What's
your
your
work?
bucket, right?
What's your bucket?
My bucket is to know all of it.
Yes, of course,
Okay.
but not to execute all of it.
Okay, but my main bucket is
things that are not in your bucket, what do you find yourself doing?
Assisting staff, training, answering questions, dealing with difficult situations, and things like that.
Okay, I mean, I would say those things are in your bucket and maybe just not listed here, but that's good to know. Thank you.
Actually, is that something that this committee would want each department head to do? It's kind of interesting, actually.
To think about who does what?
Yeah, I mean, Greg has done it a few times for us, listing out how many personnel per department, but maybe it would be of interest. I don't know, the value there.
Are you talking about the, like the chart that shows like how many for each?
Per department,
per
yeah,
department?
Greg's given that to us a couple times. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's in my other briefcase, but, so.
I think I have it in my email.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I
He's
Great
given
idea.
it to us multiple times.
Yeah.
Be an update at the, not this week's, but the next.
Perfect.
Finance.
Oh, so we'll see an
Quarterly
update soon? Okay,
Yeah,
that's good to
and
know.
it'll be before
Yeah,
this
before our
next
next
meeting,
meeting,
so
and
we'll
then check that out.
Right, I'm not talking about that, I'm just saying, because you raised a good point, as the department head, which tasks are you dealing with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? David, same thing, you've gone through an extensive list, you two seem like you're very personally involved in multiple aspects of, each department. Just from this perspective, I'm trying to understand, is there any room for efficiencies?
or like training support or things like that, because it seems like I was saying in HR, you know, having enough people or relatively enough people to, who have, you know, their work and they know their work and they've been trained in it has freed you up, right? And that's the impression that I get. And so I think you're trying to say like, is that the case in all departments?
Well, I'm also, you're right, not only that, but concerned about succession. When you have
Oh, yeah.
two individuals that have inordinate knowledge within inside that
So
department,
true.
if you become sick, hurt,
You're irreplaceable.
Yeah.
what happens?
That
to the
institutional
department?
knowledge, yeah.
100%.
Right.
And there's always a lag, right? But the idea is that it's more of like a valley, like a little valley, rather than like a gorge.
Well, you know, I said financial reporting for myself, but, you know, I'm also doing the retirement reporting, the union negotiations with Greg, the, you know, the, water and sewer billing with the DPW. I'm doing the, budgeting process, I'm doing all the bond counsel, and, you know, so, you know, but I can separate this out for.
I think it would be helpful to know.
Yeah. I can
Well,
do that.
would it be an exercise that you as a department head, that you would do yourself? Do you
I'm so sorry, say that again?
As a department head, would you do that yourself? Is that an exercise that you, even David, would you put yourself through that going, this is the overall work that our department's responsible for? A employee does this, B employee does this, C employee does, I mean, because,
Cross-training is different than what you're talking about. Obviously, we all would encourage.
right, I'm trying to
cross-training.
understand how many hours are, it's not just always financial, right? So I immediately went financial, looked at the cost difference, say David's department from 2023 to 2025. It's substantial. It's substantial. So I'm trying to understand what's the value in that financing, right? That investment, the taxpayers' money invested into your department, what's the investment? Same thing with Jenny. You know, it's like, in her department, trying to understand completely, there's a lot of tasks, as Katie quickly pointed out, there's 32 tasks, all in red, by the way.
And they all have like.
Psychologically, I thought that was
Well,
interesting,
no, I
that you
did
chose
red.
red.
I put the questions in black and the answers. in
Oh,
red.
okay, I see, I
That's what I
see.
did.
I was trying to understand the psychology behind it, you put it in red, so.
No, it was just in the screen, so.
One thing I'm thinking, you know, with the financial reporting specifically, this was in this memo from the Office of the State Comptroller. They had a nice little chart here on page 13, if anybody wants to look about, and it talks about how a number of governments are, you know, failing to file annual reports and how that's increasing. And they talk about, you know, how the lack of filing prevents various stakeholders, residents, stakeholders, state and local officials from knowing how a local government is faring. But as far as I'm aware, our reporting and filing is staying up to date so that we're not falling into any pitfalls, you know, that, you know, we're avoiding those, right? Yeah, okay, so that, you know, feels like a strength to me, and I just wanted to point that out.
Can I move on?
Yes.
Okay, so question, do you have the capacity to meet the demand? And my first answer is no, because it is crucial that the accounting position be filled. There has to be someone that can step in for me if for some reason I'm not here tomorrow. And so we really need to find an accountant and someone.
And that one's been open for quite a while
It's
now,
been open
right?
for 2.5 years.
2.5 years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
follow-up
you
question
know,
for HR.
yeah,
Sorry.
so the,
I'm ready for that one.
Okay.
So the current finance staff works as a team to meet all the demands of the office, and those efforts are intensified by the challenges of the accounting vacancy. I am, and the city is, very fortunate to have a number of excellent city employees, and I wanna make 2 points. I don't expect my staff to work a lot of overtime due to the accounting vacancy, but I've said this to the council before, that I have historically have, and especially over the past 2.5 years, have been working a high number of hours. I average 65 to 90 hours a week with no additional salary. And this is not sustainable, and it should not be expected from my replacement. It's just not a reasonable expectation. And during the process of replacing a former employee, I asked for a title increase, but a title upgrade for the preparation of the future of the department, but it was denied by the council at the time. And this request was to prepare for the future of the office, so I could delegate some of my duties to that position to be able to, deal with upgraded software as we progress in the finance department, especially with the Tyler technology. This request will be presented to council again because I think it is good preparation for the finance department for the future. What services might be underutilized? An area that I think can be improved upon is our equipment and material surplus process. And I also think that this is an area where we could additionally bring on extra revenues if we were able to improve the process itself. What areas, are there areas where you have more capacity than needed? And I'm going to say no, not at this time. So, are there new services that the department could provide that could bring in new revenue? As I just said, modifications to the surplus process could possibly generate more revenues. I just have not had the time to work with staff to look at the process in detail, but that's something that I would like to do in the future. I want to be able to advertise more, at different auction places. I want to be able to, reach out more to the public, and to get different sources to try to higher bids for the items that we surplus.
Totally.
I also want to
Yeah.
look at what we're actually surplusing. Are we surplusing brand new items that we shouldn't be, or, and if we are, why are we doing that? Can they get recycled to another department, which we try to do, automatically before we put them out to surplus? Lisa will reach out to the department heads and, say, can you use this item, that's about to be surplus?
Okay.
We're also going out for RFP soon, for our franchise agreement audit services to see if we're getting as much franchise fees as we can. And John is gonna be preparing that RFP within the next couple of weeks. Paid parking, and also increased collection efforts for unpaid parking tickets. We have got a large volume of unpaid parking tickets right now. I do not know, I've gotta work with the city attorney to find out what legal limits we are allowed as far as pursuing unpaid parking tickets. Is there a statute of limitations? How many notices are we allowed to send? How long can we try to pursue collection? Am I able to legally turn these over to a collection agency, things like that?
Yeah.
So-
I'm just curious, like, this backlog, do you know how long, how old they go? Or?
We've got them in our system ever since we started parking tickets themselves.
Okay,
But I do
okay.
not know, I've gotta work with.
That's why you gotta find out the
That's why I've
statute of
gotta-
limitations
Yeah,
and
I've gotta
everything.
find
Okay.
out the legal parameters of, what we can do there. But if I can have the time and the staff to be able to pursue that, I've already asked Brittany to try to do
Mhm.
some online research for me. And that way, we can get the ball started and gather the information. Maybe there's nothing that we can change, but maybe there is.
So, and the unpaid parking, is that, what are some of the factors that led to that? Is that, just time?
When I first became director, I actually
Yeah.
looked at the unpaid parking list, and I was really surprised at how much was
Oh,
out
so
there.
this even goes, okay, okay.
So, but again, just staff and work demands, I just haven't
Yeah.
been able to dig into it.
Okay.
The accountant position,
Oh.
what's your thoughts of why it's taken 2.5 years?
Well,
That was one.
Well, right now, there is an actual accounting shortage nationwide. The
For municipalities?
4 municipalities, which I'm going to talk about in a little while.
Is that specialized?
It's not specialized, I think it's just the accounting graduates right now, it's they're very
Sure.
shorthanded.
Yeah.
CPA firms are shorthanded, all the municipalities are shorthanded, it's not unique to Lynn.
Are there other options or other ways that that could be approached to?
I have-
Okay, all right.
Well, one thing I will say about that is that I have reached out to the, my HR organization across the state, and asked why are we having such a hard time, and it's, from the feedback that I've gotten, and also Joe looked into it a lot too,
Yeah.
that was his field,
Right.
is that college sophomores are being recruited by big accounting firms and saying, if you come to work for us for 5 years, we're gonna finish off your education for you. You graduate, you come to work for us. So the accountants aren't even hitting the market because they're getting eaten up by the private sector.
Yeah.
Through a soft.
So
be-
they're
before they
offering,
even graduate.
yeah, they're offering incentives.
Exactly.
Okay, that are,
So- and
not, that are outside
Yeah.
the range of, what we're currently offering.
That's what
Yeah.
Joe was sharing with me, and that's also what I'm hearing back from my colleagues across the state that are also having trouble filling these positions, is that is a major
Okay.
factor in it. Yeah,
Hmm.
sorry.
Okay, so, I'm gonna move on to the cost questions.
Yeah.
In what ways might changes of the federal funding affect the department this year? Finance department, not particularly. The city, though, I wanted to highlight some areas. If we were to lose the FTA DOT grants for the transit hub, airport, buses, water sewer projects, this would place a great financial hardship on the city. To date, I have not been informed on losing any federal aid. The city has already received all of its ARPA funds. Also, if any federal aid for the various community development programs such as HUD were lost, economic development, housing rehab, and micro-enterprise grants, this would also have adverse effects on the homeowners and business owners within the city. But again, I have not been informed of any cancellation of any of our current grants. The USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture loan for the fire truck may be at risk because that department is getting cut. And also, they're talking about cuts in FEMA, which
That
may
is.
affect future funding for disaster relief.
So, the fire truck, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's huge.
But that's huge,
I mean,
because a lot
Well,
of planning
but we
led
have,
into that.
but remember, we have other financing options for the fire truck, so,
Okay. Okay.
we may not end up as with a good of interest rate,
All right,
and also, the
because
fire truck
obviously
is
it's
4
a high
years away,
need, yeah.
so what's going to happen over the next 4 years? I
Right.
don't know.
It's- Yeah, that's true, that's true.
That reassurance.
I think this tone though, because I was just watching a couple of the county meetings, I think everybody is on alert, and just being very cautious because we don't know, exactly what to expect.
What I tell Greg that every day I'm reading inflation reports and,
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep updated on the different programs and things like that. The one thing that I keep reading over and over again is as the current administration is trying to either close or stop or slow down federal agencies and or programs, what's going to be very difficult in the future is to get them restarted. And it will take a long time to get them built back up to where they were 2 months ago. So that's gonna be the challenge 4 years from now, depending on how much damage is done between now and then. Next question, as the cost of materials and staff continue to rise, what changes do you anticipate for your budget for 2026 in order to maintain the same level of services? So I'm gonna highlight 6 different things here. So the 2026 budget should include the current staffing levels for the finance department, including funding for Alan as the part-time deputy. Right now, because I am short-staffed, it is very helpful for me, even if I'm only giving him 10 to 15 hours a week to keep him on. Funding for me to stay on for a year of full-time status for training and transition if my replacement is found. And then part-time for special projects until all requested projects are completed and my services are no longer needed. And I just want everybody to remember that this is a temporary expenditure, it would not go on for a very long time. Just depend on how long the council and Greg would want to keep me on. If a replacement is not found, then account is not hired, then the part-time budget should be increased, or professional services should be increased to provide the necessary staff to meet the finance department's workload. Some municipalities that are not able to find finance department or fill finance department vacancies are hiring accounting firms to assist at an average rate of $150 to $200 per hour.
That's $416,000 a year.
I know that.
Yeah, I'm just-
I actually thought, replace me, the accountant at the time, Gail's position, if you were to hire that out to an accounting firm, cost of that was like $900,000 a year. And I was like, we just can't afford that. But that is what some municipalities are doing. They're paying for 25 hours a week at $150 to $200 an hour for their accounting firm to come in to take care of the finance department. And that is for the high level work of the finance department. That is not for the detailed work.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, if I'm putting this all together, we would, the next step is to look at hiring a private firm, right?
Well,
And that-
it's gonna depend on how we do with recruitment.
Yeah.
And also Alan and I are still brainstorming different ideas, which hopefully we can have resolved by budget time.
Yeah.
But I'm giving this to this committee so you just have this information,
It's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
in your possession.
I think the connection I'm trying to draw here is that we have no applicants, there's a nationwide shortage because the private sector is pulling them all in, with incentives. And then that sounds like, we don't know, but there's a potential that in the future that might be our option going forward, is to invest more money, So it's just very interesting that that's the pattern that, we're seeing now.
Okay, and then council's already determined the market value of Mount.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, with regard to the search for finance director, how broad is that search?
So right now, all I have is it on the website, because I'm waiting for instructions as to, do we have a succession plan in-house? We don't know.
Gotcha.
So right now, it's just on the website.
I think,
the-
I'm sorry, just my personal opinion, I think
Yeah.
even if we do have a succession plan in-house,
Yeah,
we do the community justice by broadly advertising.
yes, and we have done that once. So
Okay.
it's not like it hasn't been done.
How
We did it
broad?
once, and it did not succeed. So it's been,
How broad?
I'm thinking about what we did for the exam. We had an exam in 22, I believe it was, and we did extensive paid advertising on LinkedIn, Facebook, Indeed. We did local advertising. I didn't have my brochure that I had done yet.
Right.
I think, like, if we're going to start another one, we need to look at the potential of hiring a headhunter firm to go
Absolutely.
out there and see what they can
Like
find for us.
nationwide.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to do a big search.
Seriously.
I think, because we have tried, we had one candidate sign up for that test in 2022. That candidate passed the test, they were interviewed, that's as far as it went. The accountant test that year, same thing. We had one candidate that took the test, one candidate passed the test, they were interviewed, that's as far as it went. So neither of those searches, which we did spend money on, we did put it out there to all the local venues that we could, and we did not reach anything. Now for accountant, we've still been moving on that. Sam had reached out to both accounting department heads at both schools. I went and I met them personally. The Hartwick person, Dan Butterman, was nice enough to broker a meeting with them. And I met some of their students and talked to them about the position. Not a single application has come forward. When I did in the presentation there, one of the things I really want to develop is our LinkedIn page. It's not something that Sam was comfortable with doing, and I wanted to get her doing other things and get her comfortable before we went into that one, but that's gonna be, and it was a topic in the interview for the person that's being hired on Monday, that that's gonna be a focus, and we're gonna aggressively put some money into a LinkedIn campaign for accounting and see what we can find there. But beyond spending big money on a headhunter.
Yeah, and just again, with that and, again, with the accounting, position and the difficulty, filling it, I think it's just important, for us and the public to understand that, that if we do have to go that route of, hiring a firm to do it, that would actually increase the expenses, because we'd have to go through a private route instead of in-house. And, I just, think that's something to be, for us to be cognizant of, moving forward.
Well, there is, and I'm not recommending this, but there is the possibility of shared services, right, with another
has, okay.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that it's like
Yeah.
a private accounting firm, that's all. I mean, I'm not saying that's ideal,
Right,
but just
yeah.
in terms of laying out the options.
Okay, so, to move on, the council's already determined market value of my job, by offering my possible replacement last spring, thousands of more dollars than what I'm currently making. So my question to the committee and to the council for budget is, do I include that amount in the 2026 budget? And then also, we are to transition, if we are to transition to quarterly water billings, we'll probably need a part-time person to help, administer those extra 12,000 units that will be coming in. So it's something to consider, unless the new Tyler software program, will provide easier and more efficient online payments.
No, please,
Oh, okay.
you can finish, I just
Yeah.
have a question about
Okay.
water billing.
Okay, and then also, upon completion of the Tyler technology, I expect the cost of materials and supplies to go down, because my goal is to have as many electronic payments coming in and out of the city to get rid of the paper product, which means that we can do electronic payments to vendors, we won't have to produce and print and mail the checks. We can do electronic billings for our water and sewer, we won't have to buy the ink and the toner and the forms and pay the postage and, all of that. So I'm looking to have savings there material-wise and processing-wise. So, to get as much electronic transactions back and forth, I think will be the much more efficient way, to be able to, handle all cash flow.
What's the process for tax collection? Who, like, is that the finance department,
The
or is
finance
there?
department, correct.
And so whose bucket is that in?
That's, front office.
That's where you were saying
That's-
Brittany.
That's Brittany, yeah.
Gotcha, okay. And what does the front office person also do that, so I guess what I'm asking is if like there's this person who does accounts receivable, and we're looking at processing additional receipts, and they're substantial, like how do you anticipate, like what needs to go away from that person in order for them to be able to do that we would need another person for?
Well, right now, the front office person does the tax collection, also does all the water and sewer collection.
Right,
But the water and sewer collection is only once a year.
right,
But then she also is doing all the monthly billings. She's handling all of the other 15 to 20,000 receipts that come in during the year.
parking tickets and stuff.
Parking tickets.
Yeah, got
right.
it.
And, all of the, gross utility tax receipts, the community development loan receipts. Every payment that we get into our system
Uh-huh.
has to go through that front office and reported into the financials.
Yeah,
And then she's handling all the mail, all the phones, all the customers at the window.
right.
She's doing tax searches.
She's doing tax searches?
She does the tax searches.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
Wow.
I'll organize it by positions.
That would be
so
helpful.
everything just-
Okay.
For sure, That would be helpful, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, as we continue, I think that would be more and more helpful.
So is the fee structure in line with the services provided? For the finance office, yes. If you look at the fee structure, finance office does not have that many fees that we charge. We charge $25 for a tax search, which I think is reasonable for here. We also have a bad check fee, but we're not charging for bad checks because the bank does not charge us for bad checks. And then, as far as the penalty fees goes for taxes and water, so that's by code and that's what we do. Are there services provided at no cost that should be considered for additional fees? And I said not at this time. The reason I say not at this time is because as we progress into Tyler, maybe there is a way for us to incentivize online payments. Greg and I talked about this in detail. So for example, if you pay in cash, it's this amount. If you pay by check, it's this amount. If you pay online, it's that amount. So we can encourage online payments to say, hey, it's worth me not driving into
Right.
City Hall.
Yeah, take away the processing
Yeah.
fee, I think, okay.
So what opportunities might exist for additional funding such as grants? That really doesn't affect the finance department directly. And which of these services are provided to the residents of town, and how do the rates for these compare and explain the difference? So I just highlighted that the current water and sewer rates charged to the town residents is 50% more than the city, and that's per the council approved rate tables and also per our code. And also there's various park fees that are charged on residents more than the city, and the water and sewer rates are determined via the code and the council approval, and historically charged those outside of city boundaries 50% more. One reason is that the city owns the infrastructure and maintains it, where
buy the UKG?
Pardon me?
When did we buy the UKG?
I wanna say we started in 2022.
Really?
Yeah,
What-
22, it was, I think it was July of 22, 23.
You're right.
24, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
what did
not-
we invest for that?
It's cost about 30,000 a year.
30,000 is a subscription?
Yeah, it's a subscription. It's about that.
Okay. But what was the initial investment?
I don't remember if there was initial buy-in, I can look that up and let you know.
Okay.
So, and I'm just letting you know, all of these things that I've listed here that we do manually, KVS did for us automatically. Okay, so, creating the journal entries, I have to create those manually. Takes 4 hours to create a journal entry with this system. And we
A
have to do
single
that-
journal entry?
single journal entry
For the entire city?
for the entire city, because when I pull the journal entry in, it's over 4,000 lines that I have to subtotal by department. It's a tremendous amount of work.
And that's your bucket list?
Pardon me?
That's your bucket list?
That's my bucket list, yeah. I have staff prepare it for me.
Okay.
I have them start it, then I audit it and make sure that it's correct. Then it has to be manually created into our KVS system line by line. And then that has got to get proofed to make sure that when you created it manually, you didn't make a mistake.
Right, so the data entry portion of it, you're doing 4,000 lines?
No, it comes into an Excel file, which is about 4,000 lines.
Okay, so,
Then I have staff subtotal, by department, by person. And then it's by
big process.
salary,
Wow.
FICA, retirement,
right.
all the deductions. So it's a huge,
Yeah.
it's a huge
Very
task.
detailed. Yeah.
So I want you to think about when we don't have to do that anymore,
Mhm.
right? That's going to free up a lot of staff time that can, now Stephanie, instead of doing this, she can run water and sewer them, right? That can come off of my desk.
Yep.
So, creating the New York State retirement reports, that used to take maybe an hour and a half at KPS, now it takes me about 4 hours.
Insane.
Monitoring and auditing our our accrued leave time. I have to have Stephanie, the system does not process accrued leave time correctly. It will sometimes add more than it should, sometimes it doesn't take it away when it shouldn't, or when it should, so I cannot trust it. So Stephanie is maintaining it to make sure it's what we report on employee stuff.
You might as well use Excel at that point.
Right.
Yeah, right. I
Um,
mean, that's
yeah.
kind of what it
Is
sounds
is UKG the system for requesting time off as well? Like, do employees put in their
Yes.
leave request? Okay.
There are aspects of UKG that work well.
Right, well,
But
it's
there's a lot of
interesting that,
aspects that don't.
it's interesting that it's like one system and that from employee to employer, there's like something that's wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I'm going over this in a little bit more detail is to let you know when this is fixed, this is going to provide a lot of other time for other projects and other work, areas. So, we actually have to modify time input because UKG cannot say that we have 261 working days in a year. It only can work with 2,080 hours.
Okay.
Okay, so it's things like this. We have to, New York State retirement, we have to make sure that overtime for tier 5 and tier 6 uniform people is only 15% of their annual gross salary. KBS would tell us when that overtime has been given. We have to manually calculate it, and we have to keep track of it to make sure we
That's a
don't.
lot to
Like
overlook
getting
remember.
close.
reports to the
Yeah.
retirement
Yeah.
system. So,
Again, it's like Excel
Yeah.
does a better job of that, like,
I mean, if you're just gonna-
properly formatted.
have to track all of it
Right,
yourself,
you might as well just do it in a
exactly.
spreadsheet. Yeah.
so is that system inefficient? Yes.
Yeah.
So.
For a
okay,
municipality.
Yeah.
Yes,
For a
or
municipality.
municipality
Right.
For a
is not the right
municipality.
fit.
KVS system is a 2012 product which needs to be upgraded.
Mhm.
KVS works really well. I love KVS. I support it. I would sell it. I would tell other customers to use it. But it has gotten out of date with certain functions.
Okay.
So it needs to be upgraded
And KVS would stay even with Tyler?
KVS will stay for only referencing, for history, and for being able to run reports for historical data.
Okay.
So we'll have that at our access because we have history going back to 2012 with KPS. I also, just so you know, also have our previous program on my computer
Oh,
that
geez.
dates back to 2006.
Oh, wow.
So,
And can you open it?
yes, I can open it. I can run
Okay.
reports in it. Yes, I can.
Okay, okay, that's good though.
Yes.
So we've got electronic data at least going
Yes.
back, yeah, almost 20 years.
yeah.
I mean,
So-
is that backed up anywhere, or is it
Yes.
just like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
I'm
it
like,
is.
oh my gosh,
Great.
Yeah.
okay.
Our asset management system for all of our infrastructure and working tools, that's inefficient the way we do it now. Tyler will fix this.
Great.
Okay, our fleet management, again, I believe our Tyler system will fix this, because when we get all of our assets, our fixed assets, our fleets, everything into the Tyler system, all the systems are gonna talk to each other. So when accounts payable will process an invoice for an auto inventory part, it's automatically gonna go over into the auto inventory itself. Then when Central Garage uses that part, it's gonna come automatically out of the inventory, and it's gonna produce a work order and a journal entry to charge it to the department. So it's all gonna
So
be.
it's
connected.
all really.
Oh, that's
seamless.
really wonderful.
It's
way
all
that
gonna,
goes.
all the systems are gonna talk to each
Yeah.
other, and all the manual system of creating all the communication between the
Mhm.
modules is not going to be needed.
Yeah, 'cause
It's all gonna be automated.
Do we need-
It sounds to me like there's several patches that you have right now to keep this whole, like Band-Aids, keeping this
Right.
whole
Yeah.
system together, you know?
Yeah.
And it sounds like Tyler is, something that can pull that all into one.
So I'm gonna be really transparent. I'm so scared of
Yeah.
Tyler Technology because we are putting all our eggs in this basket, and I know how excited we were about UKG, and then like here we are. So that's just I'm bringing that fear into the conversation.
Well,
But what I'm wondering is what you just said describes, I mean, it's beautiful, right? It's like a great synergy. Do we have to purchase additional modules in addition to the finance department module? I know
yes.
we're gonna have a presentation on this, but I'm just wondering like,
Yes, and the Tyler or the Tyler contract that we provided to council shows you all the modules, and what Greg and I have been working on with Tyler is to
Okay.
break those modules down and tell you exactly what they are going to provide
okay,
for the different departments.
okay.
And
All right, I'll take a closer look at that.
so, and just so you know, before I would even consider any of the other modules citywide for Tyler, we put Tyler through 6 different payroll presentations.
Good.
I gave them a list of 17 questions, and I said, take me through this process and show me how the Tyler payroll software works.
Oh, nice.
And Tyler had their programmers and their staff members on the webinar or on the Zoom meeting, and we went through all the different aspects. So once I reviewed it and thought that it was worthwhile, then I brought staff in, and then we reviewed it with staff, and then we brought some department heads in. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, we had OPT look at the scheduling portion
Okay.
of the payroll system. So we have put them through a number of questions and research, and but payroll was my big one, and I think David was in on some of the leanings, and I know Joe was at the time too, where, but I've got emails with, here's my questions, take me through, and I wanna make sure that all of this is going to be a yes.
Mhm.
And because I was very direct with them, saying I'm not going through this again.
Yeah. Is it, so we're not following the procurement process on that because it's through purchasing,
Well, first of all,
Whatever it's
it's professional services, but we've also, in our process of looking for computer, software, we've also looked at other companies.
that was gonna be my follow-up
Yeah.
question. Okay, good to know. Thank
And
you.
I'm just keeping an eye on the time for us. We're getting close to 7:30, so we'll
Oh.
wrap this up, we'll give you whatever time you need, of course, to get through this.
All right, and then the last item for inefficiencies, we would like to see improvements to the website, which Carrie and I have talked about on different occasions.
Yeah.
We just wanna make it a little bit more, what's the word?
User friendly?
User friendly, yeah, so like, which, again, Tyler with the Ferris wheel, they'll just be able to go to the Ferris wheel, online payments,
Okay.
OPT rides, DPW work,
So it'll be a little more
Yeah.
direct
provide much more modern, efficient programs for processing financial, budgetary, utility, recreation, public apps, et cetera. I just think that the system will coordinate a lot of the departments citywide. And again, I've already mentioned this, providing electronic payments to and from the city. This will, I think, produce much more effective processing, and it will have much better fraud protection and automated transactions, and incentivizing online payments. Upgrading the city's website, upgrading the parking ticket system, upgrading our electronic communications between all departments, public agencies via Tyler, and upgrading our electronic billing and payment processes via Tyler. So I just want to make, I know one of the questions is, how is Tyler going to save you money, right? So I just want to clarify this before we even get into the process. Once the conversion to Tyler is complete and all systems are fully implemented and the staff is trained, is when we'll be able to determine any possible savings as far as restructuring is concerned. But one thing that I can strongly say is that the amount of time required to finish the task is going to be greatly reduced, providing staff more time to complete projects in waiting, expand cross-training, which is essential for our limited staffing, and to provide real-time information to all parties more quickly and more efficiently. I didn't write this sentence, but I'm hoping that it's going to reduce the number of hours that is required from me and or whoever is the director and the deputy. So as far as cost savings, I'm not sure dollar-wise yet. I won't know that. For example, when Alan talked about the county converting, he was able to eliminate 2 positions. I don't know if that's gonna be possible because we don't really have that much of extra staff now, right?
It might eliminate the need for 2 additional positions.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it will also, what I'm hoping that it's going to do is to get rid of the backlog
Yeah.
and provide for more staff training, more cross-training.
Some breathing room,
Right.
more quality
The
of life.
backlog is
Right.
definitely.
But also more expansion. So for example,
Also
when
more.
the council comes and says, you know, can you explore this idea? I will be able
Yeah.
to have the
More
overview.
flexibility with that.
Yeah, sure.
So what ways could cooperation and coordination be improved between the department and other city departments, other towns, other county agencies? Implementation of the Tyler technology will greatly enhance communication, coordination, and workflow between departments. Possibly for the future, the county can collect taxes on our behalf, but neither party is ready to implement that. Right now, the county is taking over tax collection for the small municipalities. They're not ready to take on for the city because it's just too large. They also, I do not support HR and civil services with the county, and neither does Alan, just so you know that. I believe that both of these areas should stay under the control of the city, because I think we will do it much more efficiently and much more beneficial to the city as a whole. And we currently have shared service agreements between the town and city that work well, which, future presentations from DPW and things like that will expand on that information. We have shared services with the county for the city prosecutor. I talked with the police chief yesterday. He said it's highly successful. And our current agreement with the county for assessor services should be reviewed for updating the goals of that contract. And are there tasks done by staff that completed by community volunteers? And I would say no, not on a recurring basis. We've had interns before that have helped us digitize and get rid of paper files. Our overtime in finance office is very minimal. Right now, I am utilizing some overtime to get backlog caught up for the front office. And I did review all of these questions with the staff, so.
Yeah, and I do wonder, when we talk about overtime now, because I know that it's not maybe a budgetary impact, but the impact of, you know, I know the amount of hours that you're doing, you know, if you were not able to do those hours, what do you feel the impact would be?
Oh,
And I'm sure it'd be
you would-
massive, but I'd like to hear.
If, we would be non-compliant in some areas, we would be missing deadlines, we would be missing, a lot of state and regulatory,
The comptroller would discuss way more often.
as I tell Greg, the calendar and due dates is one of my biggest challenges, because the amount of workload to meet those demands, I only have so much time to get it done. For example, I have March 31st deadline, I'm not sure if I'm going to meet it, so
city would be, you know, at risk of missing these deadlines, not being compliant.
And
And I guess I go back to, you know,
And I
like,
say that
yeah.
calmly as I can. I'm not, I don't want you to think that.
No, but I, you know, what I'm hearing is that due to the due to some of these inefficiencies, it is creating, you know, this, you know, workload that is ballooned, it sounds like, you know, to that
Well,
point.
As Greg can attest to, when I realized what the review system was adding to the finance office, I wasn't in a good spot at that time. Because he just came to my office and said, this may be the straw that breaks my back, because it just was, it was an unnecessary addition of manual labor. But we had to try it, at the time, but it just didn't work. So I can provide more information if you need more, but what I will do is I will restructure this memo and I will classify it by position.
This is really.
Not by
thorough.
name, but I'll do it by position.
Perfect.
So-
Yeah, no, that'd be
so,
great. And then just due to the timing, which I'm realizing, I think this is the only meeting when we have 2 departments presenting.
Yeah, could we actually
So-
just go over the list one more
Yeah,
time?
so I was actually
Yeah.
gonna look at that, because what I was thinking is, I know we talked about formulating some questions, but due to timing, you know, I think, you know, especially we've had 2 back-to-back, we can maybe take some time next time, but next month what I have is April, we've got, the police department, May, the fire department, June, we've got Department of Public Works, and July, OPT. Can I check that right off?
Can you just
So-
email that to us?
Yeah, it was in the minutes, and I pulled it right off of the minutes, so hopefully I'm getting that correct, but yeah, we can send that out.
It's on the list of questions as well. if
Oh,
you
it is
have-
on there,
Yeah.
okay.
So, 2 things. One is, I just realized that we don't have Central Garage on here. And although he's not technically a department, he's a one-man marvel, I feel like we should talk about what the city administrator's life looks like as
Mhm.
well.
Okay.
I don't know how we wanna fit those in.
So we have also, at the end, we have an August meeting that we
Okay.
discussed, you know, kind of wrapping up, but maybe we can look at, you know, scheduling that then, too.
Okay.
Would that be?
And we may be able to do like, so OPT and Central Garage share
Sure.
a location, so
Yep.
they might have some overlap. I know this maybe went a little longer than we all would like, but that might be we might be able to combine those. Although OPT discussion's gonna be pretty big, so we'll do Central Garage first.
Yeah.
Okay, and then city administrator in August.
Does that sound good to everybody?
Cool. Greg and/or Carrie. I feel like I've asked this question before, but possibly it's on an internal drive that can only be accessed when you're in the building. Is there a digital folder somewhere with like all the union contracts in it and all the policies that are not in the code, but they're just, you know, things that have been approved over time, like I know that we have some things that are printed in the budget, but I know that there's like the vehicle use policy, right, which recently came out. Is there like a one-stop shop where we can familiarize ourselves with those?
I wouldn't say there's a one-stop shop,
Okay.
but, you know, we can compile those things.
I think that would be really helpful, just in terms of like our operational understanding, knowing what policies govern operations is helpful. Yeah, I've often wondered, and I've been meaning to ask. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, do you have any specific things you're looking for?
No, just a general, like I said, just a general understanding of how policies shape operations, I think is really helpful. So if that could be compiled in just like in a zip or something, and then also the union contracts, because we had a question come up in community wellness with
Mhm.
regard
Yes.
to the, one of the contracts, and I was like, oh, I'll have to dig that out, but then I was thinking like, I would honestly just like to have them like in a folder on my desktop that I could look at. Yeah.
As far as union contracts, usually any questions for union contracts are answered by Greg, HR, and myself.
Uh-huh.
So if you have any questions that you're not able to answer, just forward them.
Yeah, I just wanted to like read them, you know, right? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Okay. all set then.
Cooley. Thanks, everybody.
And we will convene again next month,
Sounds
and
good.
we're adjourned for today.
I do have a couple follow-up questions.